Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trading Spaces. We've got a lot of action to talk through, not just from the past week or so, but also literally happening now as we stream, which I always love. We're going to be talking about altcoins. Remember those? Yep, they're back. BTC at a pretty important point right now, and we'll dive into a little bit on the EMA side of things. Before we go into that, a real quick disclaimer. This is, of course, for educational purposes only. None of this should be viewed as or taken as financial advice. Den, we're out of the range.
Yes, yes. What a perfect
How,
day to stream.
I know,
I'm
right? How are
excited.
you doing?
I'm good. I love a little bit of movement in the markets. And I think the Clarity Act voting has started 32 minutes ago. So they should be inside right now. And I'm excited to see what comes out.
Yeah, we've had a lot of data on both the macro side and a bunch of stuff happening within crypto as well, like the Clarity Act for a good example. But I think it's helped really to create a good bit of momentum and some nice volatility that we haven't really had in prior weeks. So while we haven't had this like crazy parabolic move that everyone loves, we have really had some nice momentum to build on, especially on BTC. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Into resistance, that is.
yeah.
Just want to clarify that, before getting too excited. But I think there has been a lot of movement in the chart since we last streamed, especially on altcoins. Yes, I do remember those. That was a good intro. I was laughing, but I was muted, so you guys couldn't hear it. But no, I think on BTC, yeah, this is a very important day, I would say, with such an important decision being made on the Clarity Act, and then also us doing that where we had like a little bit of a breakdown kind of yesterday, and then
Mhm.
now we're like pushing back up, but obviously into that same resistance.
Ex
Yeah,
exactly.
how are we
Yeah,
feeling about it?
it's definitely like we're at a pretty critical point right now. And I think before we kind of dive into the charts, and there's a lot for us to talk about today, so I think it's going to be super interesting. Um, what's been moving things in this momentum that we're seeing over the past kind of few weeks? Well, the crazy thing really is that there's been quite a lot of quite bad data that we've had come
Yep.
out, especially on the macro level, that go back um, even, I would say, a year ago. This would have really been way more painful, I think. But it just seems like the narrative around company earnings being so strong that it is carrying the market and all the optimism that comes around it. And when I talk about bad data, we're talking here about inflation data largely. So we had core CPI. Well, we had CPI, which of course came in high because, energy. But core CPI stripped from energy was also above expectations. That was earlier this week. That rose 0.4% month over month. It was expected to rise 0.3. It was also above expectation on the non-core CPI. PPI, which came in yesterday, if I'm remembering correctly, was absolutely wild. I mean, this is like one of the highest month-over-month PPIs I can remember seeing. It was up 1.4% month over month, which is just an unbelievable rise. And to give some scale to that, the expectation was a 50 bips, so a 0.5% increase, and we did
Wow.
1.4%. The month prior, it was up 0.7%, and that was like, yeah, I think we were talking about this at the time. I was like, yeah, PPI was extremely high. Now, the caveat with a lot of PPI stuff is sure, energy plays a huge role in that. The counter argument to that is, well, it doesn't look like the Iran situation is going away anytime soon. We've had Brent crude above $100 for a pretty sustained period now. And it just doesn't seem like a resolution's in sight. The only thing that's happening here is that the belief is that the consumer is still very resilient, that the AI capex spend is going to see results. And we just had retail sales data come in, which was at expectations, but rose for the third straight month. So it shows, despite all of the inflation that we're seeing, despite the increased energy costs, the US consumer in particular is resilient. And that gives more confidence that these crazy earnings are going to continue. I mean, yesterday we had a big sell off where everyone was worried post PPI.
Mm.
Cisco reports earnings and has a monster earnings report, which is very much linked to the AI capex investment. Stocks up 15%. Nvidia, I mean, just I think Jensen Huang going to China has, for some reason, added 3% to Nvidia's market cap. It's like the, we've been talking, I think, probably now for about a year about how insane some of this stuff is, but the earnings are showing it. So it's hard not to be bullish, generally speaking. But when you look at the risk curve and assets at the far end of it, like crypto,
Like us,
this,
yeah.
yeah, this macro setup is not where crypto has ever historically performed well, albeit we've never had this macro setup in the entire duration of crypto's existence. So that there's a caveat there. But that in itself, even just like minor liquidity restrictive, high inflation environments have never boded well. But it seems that risk appetite is there and we're seeing it in the charts, which is, I think, like a perfect transition now to have a look at
Yeah.
what's been going on, really, because I, I'm even struggling, despite being quite bearish, really, since December. I'm struggling to have like to feel super bearish right now.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know what your thoughts are here, Dan.
I think that we are kind of like at that inflection point right now. And the thing is that just as the signals in the world are very conflicting, I think right now, to me, at least on BTC, they are as well. Like if you look at this, we're kind of like above our daily trend, which is in purple. You guys can see here the numbers on
Yeah.
the left if you want to copy them. Then we are below our daily EMA 200, which is the pink one. So we're kind of like squeezed in the middle of, support and resistance, I will say. And then if we move to the 3-day time frame, we can see that we are below resistance. And then on the weekly, we are as well. If you want a bit more explanation, I did a video on this. It's on my feed from like a week ago. But this is just like very clean, like bull, they are in a certain order, bear, they are in a different order. And we're kind of like at that breaking point. I will say that I do think that if we show like crazy strength here and push like above 82K, I think like we'll move up pretty swiftly if it's like a convincing reclaim. But right now, we can't say yes or no because we are literally in the middle of a very tight and kind of like annoying support and resistance, and we haven't broken down. We haven't, broken up. I will say though, like on a lower time frame today, we've definitely are making some attempts. I think it's a combination of, I think Trump is also meeting with China, and there are some,
Yeah, he's with
quotes
Xi
coming
right now.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw in some Discord groups that I'm in, just people speculating a bit on it. And, we have obviously the Clarity Act voting today, which, people might be positioning for and so forth. I think with BTC, we're just, yeah, time has to tell. And I think time will tell pretty quick. That will be my read. I think, of course, we can range a little bit here, but I think like kind of like the zone of where it will become clear whether it's up or down is kind of tightening as we speak. So, yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think like last night, I think if we were streaming yesterday evening, I feel like we'd have a bit more of a bearish skew to how things
Of
were
course,
starting to
because
look.
yeah, because it looked like it was breaking down. Because we've said a few times these November lows, these December lows, they're all super important, you know. So it's like us rejecting from here, like wouldn't be good. So us yesterday breaking down wasn't a good look, but now we're attempting a reclaim again. So it's just like kind of like a push and pull between the bulls and the bears right now. And I think we're seeing that on some of these altcoin charts as well. I'm not sure how much you've been looking at those the last few days.
Yeah, it's been super interesting to see actually some of the moves across alts in general. I know we were talking a little bit about Doge. I also saw your tweet about Doge in particular,
Yes.
where I think that's still looking pretty interesting.
Oh, I
And
think
has
so. Yeah.
yeah, it's been especially compared to BTC, even through yesterday, was looking really solid actually in the grand
Yesterday
scheme of things.
it was pretty strong. I will say today the strength has died down a little bit. I am in a
Mm,
position, but from lower I tweeted about it, I think around here.
yep.
And this is actually a setup that I did want to talk about today a little bit because it's something that I trade a lot. I have explained it sometimes, but maybe not for everyone that's like listening here. So I'll show you on one that's already completed. So whenever we are looking at a chart, we're obviously always wondering like where we are in the markets, right? I mean, I think everyone that sees this chart can very much agree that this whole situation was a bear market.
Mm,
And something that helps us define where we are in a trend is EMAs. And I just already, you know, put them for you here on the left, but you can see one more time the ones that I have on my chart. And basically, whenever we are in a bear market, we can always see that the longer form EMAs are above the shorter form. So this is 200, 100, and then we go into the shorter term cluster, which is like 32, 25, and 13. So that's the order that we have in a bear market. Now, in a bull market, things look a little bit different. This is a little bit of a messy chart, but I'll show you on Doge, because that's one that has very clear bull trends. You can see that these EMAs are exactly the other way around. So it's like short above long. And most of the time, when we are like in a very long downtrend situation, which we had here, at some point, you know, not with all charts, but with some, there will be a moment that we kind of like start showing some life again. And whenever that happens, these are really nice trades to take where you kind of trade the assets from one EMA to the next one, which is what happened here. And we call that a gap fill trades. So this is what you have been seeing on a lot of charts this week, which is a really exciting momentum for EMA traders like me, because usually they all kind of go together. So it's like the stronger ones will start and then, you know, they go like either by narrative or just all together. And I think last week completed like, I would say 50+% of the charts that have like a little bit of volume completed this gap fill, at least, probably even more.
mm,
So this is super interesting for us as traders, right? Because not only is it a setup that in my example I've, you know, verified to trade well in the past, it's also something that we know like if one goes, they sometimes all go together. Now the bigger question is, we now know that like, you know, we had a bear trend here. We had like our dead bottoming out stage here. We are now trying to reclaim our EMAs. The next step potentially would be to start crossing these EMAs into the order that we know is bullish, which is the other way around. You can see here bearish and then this time bullish. So the bigger question that I now have as a trader is, are we going to start seeing some sort of reclaim where we can have a little bit more momentum to the upside? As of today, I don't have that answer very clear because most of the charts are either in this position or they are somewhere here where Doge is right now, where they're still
Mm.
like either they're trying to still perform the gap fill or they touched it and they went down. But there's not really like any clarity on whether we're going to start a new trend. And I'll show you what a new trend looks like with our
This
favorite
is
of all
some chart, isn't
time.
it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you can see here with Zcash, for instance, it's like when it reclaims and it really performs like that new trend. And here you can also see, even though they didn't even cross bearish, because that's apparently how strong it was, you can see like what happens when it reclaims those EMAs and starts trending again. Like this is what we call like a healthy trend, where they're all in the right order and it's really holding it kind of perfectly. Obviously, Zcash is a very extreme example, right? Because it was like the one big outperformer. But I think like to me, my big question, and that kind of ties together with BTC, is like, are we going to reclaim these EMAs and are they going to cross in the right order? Because if they do, you can also see with BTC, this is like a trend. This is
Yeah.
something that we want to ride like for the long term. And you can also see last time what we had, like we had a bear market, we switch and we start trending. And right now we are like at the top of that retest and we have the potential to flip it, but we don't know if that's going to happen yet. So it's a very exciting, moment in the market, apart from playing these gap fills the past few weeks, which was really fun, obviously. But we can now potentially do something where it kind of becomes like a cross and we like, do that and start going from there. Yeah, this is something that I will be very closely tracking, but I do always have in mind what you just said at the beginning, right? Like the world feels a little bit like it's in shambles. Also, the summer is coming, which is not,
That for me is like one of
yeah,
the psychological things that I
100%.
find it tough with. I would say there has been a spectacularly high correlation with the bad trades that I've made to the ones that I've placed in May. It's just,
Yes,
it
exactly.
gets
I
me
feel you.
almost every single time that we see this. And it happens so much in like
Mm,
March, May period, where it's like, we are so back. Memes run.
yeah.
I think, was it 2024 where we had that like
Mm-hmm.
massive
It
Pepe
was.
run and stuff? And it was like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, now we're going. And then it was like, summer's
Nope.
flatlined.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a
I
little
think
scarred from that.
I hear you. I think personally, to me, these type of things don't have to be where it's like, it flips it and it goes like up forever. I think what could
No.
also happen, and this is in my opinion the most likely scenario, is that we do something like this and we like kind of like, stall for a bit and then, eventually make it out.
Which would
I
actually be
think
quite a nice trend to,
I,
to
I
to
I
see
think it
that,
would
right?
be. Yeah, I
Consolidate.
think it would be because the charts have shown signs of life right now, which
Mm.
is good. Like we've seen that we're not because this isn't even life. Like this is like negative life. This, this is just like torture and suffering. I think this is the first real like action we've seen in like such a long time. Like probably pre 1010. I
Yeah.
think for most charts. And that is something good, that doesn't mean that we are solved today, that doesn't mean we're solved next week. Like these structures, they are, still really brutal. If we zoom out, like it's still pretty brutal, but I think personally that this like move up could be like the beginning of like a little bit of a range where eventually, it will become a little bit more constructive. I still think that most altcoins are extremely useless, and will be really useless over the next few
Mm.
years just because of dilution and yeah, everything that happened with 1010. It's just there's not really a lot of reason to believe in them right now, or ever.
What do you think, by the way, of Pengu in particular? Because that was certainly one of the alts that prior to 1010, you and I talked about quite a bit, actually, as
Yeah,
leading, if we just take
definitely.
hype out of it, and I'm sure we're going to talk about hype later, but like it was the best of the memes. That and Doge, to be
Mm.
honest. How are you feeling that sitting right now when you look at this?
I think this is one of the ones that really show like my point. And this might be even a little bit of a what they call front runner, where
Hmm.
he's a little bit more early than the rest. Because I think like this shows that at least it is really, like I said, trying something. We had like, 10-10 happen. Oh my God.
Oh my
This week
God.
is so crazy. And then, we like went down, we tried, we went more down, we had a range, and now we're breaking out. And we kind of like, we have the opportunity here to do something. And by doing something, guys, I want to clarify, I don't mean we're pumping to all-time highs. I don't mean that we're, doing anything like really crazy. I just mean like showing some sort of structural chart that is better than this, you know?
Hmm.
And I think at this point, people are also, we are so scarred that everyone's just mega, mega happy with the pumps that we have, which is like super funny because if you look at the magnitude
Yeah, it's just like don't
of,
zoom out. Zoom as far as you can into a chart and be happy with what you see.
I know.
Well,
And people
I
in Discord groups are like, did you catch it? Did you caught it? And I'm like, caught what?
I know.
No, but I
Well, I
think,
think what's interesting about Pengu, especially when I was looking at Pengu and I was comparing it to Doge, and it's like there is some stuff where you're like, Pengu has like a lot of interesting support, whereas like you've got the yearly open right underneath it that kind of is
mhm.
nicely mapped along like the daily 100. And then on Doge, like you've got the yearly open, I think is above it, if I remember correctly. It's kind
Yeah,
of like it's slightly more,
correct.
but they're both kind of interesting charts in different ways.
For sure. And I think if I remember correctly, so I know we weren't streaming back then, but this is a really good example. Sui is a really good example of all the way back here, and it's a bit of a history lesson for newer folks maybe, but all the way back in 2024, like this was a really like ugly time in the market. There was the same situation as now with altcoins. Obviously the context was different, but it was just very flat, very down, nothing was popping. And then suddenly Sui.
This was literally one of the coins that I bought during that like March to April 2024 euphoria mode and fucking just got obliterated in the summer
Yeah,
with
this
yeah.
was a nasty deviation. But no, so with Sui, and this is actually something that I back here tweeted and traded about, and I got a lot of shit for it because people were like, "Why on earth would you be buying an altcoin?" And I
Mm,
was like, you know, to me, this was like the first. Sui was one of the first, but I think two other charts that were for the first time trying something. After
yep.
this really long months and months where nothing was happening, no altcoin was having any movement, it started like doing something. And I think in general with the market, it will always be like that, that like everything is super dead. And then one by one, like the stronger ones will start making attempts. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't. But I think like Pengu could be one of these examples where it's one of the first that's trying to do what eventually, hopefully, more of them will do, in my opinion, after the summer, where it's like they had like this downtrend and then a range, and it's kind of like reclaiming those levels, reclaiming that yearly open, and potentially starting to make a move above these EMAs. That could once again like take a while, right? We could do like something like this, and then like it doesn't have to be like tomorrow, but I think eventually charts will try to build a bit more of a supportive structure. I think we will most likely range around all of these bottoms that we have made, and maybe that can dip a little bit into new lows, but I don't, yeah, personally think we've seen so much sideways and down. How do you feel about that? Do you think there will be like really convincing new lows?
It's it's just so hard to say. I mean, when you just look at the charts and you kind of forget everything else, which is of
Mm-hmm.
course like something that we can't do in crypto. There's a
Mm.
lot of like structural like positivity in like the way that some of these are making really positive moves. They've,
Yeah.
broken out from a range that they've held for quite a long time, especially across alts. It's like they've just completely bled out. And
Yeah.
now we're seeing across a number of charts. Like
Yeah.
this one is in
This one.
particular a really good one. I think this is like a it when I kind of find it interesting when we start to see alts moving a little bit outside of these like one-off random narrative pieces that's just
Absolutely.
like gets
Yeah.
immediate like wicks and then immediately is just sold straight off, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like when we start seeing these moves like these gap fills that actually a lot of the assets that we've just been looking at have done, if they can then consolidate and you form like a base, again, this is like nicely above like the yearly open, it kind of feels like okay, as you kind of get through that summer period, even if we're not seeing like big moves, if they can maintain like a nice consolidation range and it's like a slow, steady grind up, that's when I'm like, okay, now this is starting to like feel like interesting as a place where I can start accumulating if I'm starting to see the rest of the macro situation easing out.
100%. That's exactly how I feel. I do think that it needs time. There will always be a few like Sui was back then that will be like earlier than the others.
Mm,
If you have like the headspace and the skill to play those, I think that's a good idea because there those outliers will always be there. Like hype was when everything was dead, like Zcash was. In that sense, we saw INJ even yesterday making like, crazy move. It did retrace for a bit, but still, it was, I think I saw it up like 14% at one point, and I was like, wow, this
it's
thing
crazy.
really doesn't give a fuck. Yeah, that is crazy. But I think in general, yeah, if something has a bit of a narrative and is showing like those outperformer characteristics, which in my opinion are having stronger EMAs than others, being above the yearly open versus others. I think, for instance, oh, it's my drink. Ondo is also, a good example where I saw, I don't know, some numbers about them having like 70% market share in their little
Yeah,
corner of what they do.
Ondo have been kind of really alongside what we've been really doing at Kraken, heavily in the tokenized
Yeah.
asset space.
Yeah,
So
so here you see this is the same situation. Whereas like yearly open reclaim, it had that ugly range, it broke out. EMAs, I mean, yeah, it's back under, the daily
it's amazing
200,
how
but
many similar structures we're seeing here, really, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah,
And
we're seeing signs of life, the first signs of life in a while, and I think we should take them at face value unless Daddy Bitcoin gives us a reason not to,
yeah,
or Grandpa ES, of course. But I think that to me is the most important. I think cautious optimism structurally is okay, but with very conservative targets and a very conservative view in general in regards to the altcoin market. Like this is not 2017. This is also not
mm.
2021. So our view has to be different.
It
But
feels like, and we've talked about this a lot, and you mentioned this a little bit when it comes to Pengu and Sui. This for me feels like a time where one, it can be a bit of a dangerous time where people start getting a bit of FOMO. They've had nothing to trade for quite
mm,
a while. Like everything has kind of been dog shit and trading in a range. We haven't wanted to touch alts for ages because there's just been literally no signs of life. And now things are starting to do something. This is kind of like the perfect time for someone to convince themselves of a narrative and start like trading in here.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and look, that's not to say, but if you did that on the Sui chart, like what you were talking about, it paid off. Like, but there are also
Mm.
like 100 other examples of charts that did a
Where it
similar
didn't pay off.
pattern. And exactly, it feels
Yeah,
like the
totally agree
the
with that.
best like advice I've heard you say a lot in these situations, Dan, is looking for those first movers. And now it's like a okay, so we had Pengu, we had Doge, we had like some of these other alts like make the move first, had quite convincing, nice gap fills. And even if they consolidate, it's like, okay, now we're gonna these are the ones I need to pay attention to. And I can
Yes,
filter out some of the noise and I just need to be
exactly.
patient. And that for me is where the most value comes. In particular with alts, I would look at, BTC, etc., a little differently. But for the alt side of things, I'm I'm not like buying in like any kind of size at this level here.
Mm-mm. No, no, I completely agree. And I think, and I've said this a lot of times before, but also you don't ever have to buy, you don't have to full clip your entire
Yeah.
like belongings into one altcoin, like you can scale in, you can, look for like different levels. You can think like, okay, if it retests this range high, if it reclaims this, that's confirmation. Like there's a lot of different scenarios to play this. I think in general, like I said, caution is very much still advised. I would be a little bit more confident if BTC did a reclaim of this, which it does seem like it wants to attack that
Mm,
EMA for like the third time technically, but like the fourth candle that's like hovering around it, which is a really interesting day to do that, with also the Clarity Act being decided on as we speak.
mm,
Yeah, I think to me, what's really logical here is to kind of like make those watch lists with charts that look structurally different than others. And then also, look a little bit at those narratives. I think compared to different cycles, narratives, and narrative is maybe not even the right word. It's just like having like an actual thesis is so much more important, because before, people still believed in the lies a bit more. I think that ship has sailed with crypto. So
yeah.
unfortunately, it's not as doable to just wing it in that sense. Like you really need to stand out. All the information is super visible these days. Things travel really fast with AI and stuff as well. So it's harder to like make people believe something that isn't there. I think that's also, for
Hmm.
instance, why hype did so good for a
I was
long
just
time,
about to
because
say, hype today
yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah,
10, nearly 10%. That's an
they had
unbelievable candle.
something happened, right? What was it again?
Yeah, so I
Coinbase.
think they had like Coinbase was stepping in to like support some of their USDC treasury. I like that's kind of interesting. I think
Yeah.
that's like the kind of news that in 2021, 2017,
Oh
it'd just been
man,
like
would have mooned it.
monstrous. Ah, yeah,
All
but
time
now it's kind
highs.
of
Woo.
like, yeah, like, like it's kind of
Now
something,
not
but
anymore. No,
it's moving
it
on some
is.
of this
Yeah.
alongside the
I mean, it
wider
better be on a day
momentum.
like today, right?
Exactly.
It
And
was really weak
it was
for a
weak.
bit. Yeah. I saw something about some people from the inside that were supporting it for a while. Like there was something with them. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I think this. Oh, what a front run of the EMA. I was ready to
Yeah.
bid some if it would be lower, like here, but
Yeah,
I
kind
was
of that
correct.
similar level to where we were talking about last time, right?
Yeah, because we did like the entry here with
Yep.
Chase, and we had the exit here on our stream. I mean, that was a good
It was a
avoidance
great
of
trade.
a lot of chop also. I mean, I think, yeah, hype just needs to break that like 40, mid 40s. Then it has like some more chance to attack these, I think. But structurally, this is like not my favorite chart. If it
No.
would have been a bit lower, I would have loved it more. But now it's also, yeah, I don't know. This wasn't something I would have traded with my system, but I
Hype
saw
is
some
one of those
friends.
where it's just like it's such a wild card because when it makes a move, it's going to make a serious move because like the believers are there.
True.
Kind of feels like the
Yeah.
Soul 2021,
Oh, it
like,
for sure does.
will just
Yeah.
power through anything kind of thing. Um, so
Absolutely. But also one that has there's a little bit of history missing here, but there also one that has like a positive EMA structure. So really shows you
yes,
like, obviously these crossed a while before, and it did like a little bit of that thing that was kind of reminiscent to the Sui thing here.
yeah,
Because I remember also with hype around when this happened. Oh, sorry guys, my internet. When this happened, it was also a bit sketch because the rest of the market wasn't doing any reclaims at all. It was really similar to Sui, where it's like it looks like no, this can't be real, this can't be real, and then it's like, oh, it is, you know?
And then there's the move, and it's like melt at your
Yes,
face, right? Yeah.
exactly.
It's well, I think we talked about that exact moment on the hype chart on stream, right? When it was making that move up into
Yeah,
resistance. We said like it's at a really important turning point, and then
for
it kind of just
sure.
rejected and went back. I'm one thing. So before we jump into like everyone's favorite coin in ETH, I
Oh no, I
I'm
don't want
sorry.
to get the mood down.
I apologize to everyone watching. I don't even want to see it myself. But the thing I'm kind of curious about that maybe a lot of listeners that watch and certainly hear you, Dan, talk a lot about EMAs. How much do you? I know we've talked a lot about like the daily EMAs. How much time do you spend looking at the different time frames of EMAs? Like on like the 4 hourly versus like the different time frame charts. Like what what do you kind of care about most?
I would say the daily is number one, but then the 4 hour and yeah, the 1 hour is more for like entries. I would say the 4 hours to me is really important, which is also with BTC. For instance, why this is so interesting, because we kind of like did that perfect little 4 hour trend reclaim. And especially when an asset is just reclaiming this, it really should push. Like you don't want to see
Yeah.
when it just reclaims that it goes under again, like we did here or here. This was a very good example of it being really scammy, where it's like we can only do one push and then we're supposed to ride the trend, but we just can't do it. That's why I found this really positive today when we were kind of like dipping into this area and then holding. I would say that 4 hour and 1 day are the most important and they should always be used together. I think that's like my answer. And then obviously you want to use SR as well. If you
Yeah.
look on Doge here, this was also a really nice confluence
Mm,
because, you know, it's a little, like I said, little weak here today. But this is such a beautiful level where we had like this bit of a, it's not a super clean range, but it's like a bottoming structure, I would call it maybe more.
yeah.
And then we can see, you know, we cross our EMAs, we start writing them, we hold it with really light touches, also good. And then we see that we have our 1 day 100 in green, exactly confluent in that same zone as the 4 hour. And that's exactly like what I want to see when I take a trade, when it's not just like one time frame or one reason to take the trade. Like preferably you have like multiple reasons to do it and multiple time frames and, you know, confluence factors lining up. Because here you also had like, you know, these highs that kind of, you know, were hopefully flipped, which it did.
Mm,
Yeah, and I think on hype, if we let's see what we are looking at. Okay, yeah, this is why hype was like pretty choppy with that.
it was.
Not easy. This is also why, you know, looking at this, this is why this was not something here that, you know, with these lows that made like a lot of sense to me. Yeah. They're
Let's bring up
interesting.
ETH in the last few minutes, just so that we end on a real high.
Oh
Because
man. I even
yeah,
drew a
this
triangle. That's how you know it's bad. Man, this is embarrassing. I don't even know what to say. Even on a day like this, like come on, man. At
is
least
like alts
try.
moving.
Yeah,
Like
oh, that's also something I wanted to discuss with you. What's your POV on alts having such a strong momentum this time, but ETH not doing anything?
I I think
Because
we
that's
saw
usually not
this.
the case.
I agree with you, and I think when we were talking about this similarly in January, I believe, when you remember when we had a bit of that movement on Pepe and a few others, and
Yeah.
we were kind of saying like, you know, Pepe's moving and some of the memes are moving, ETH not so much, and we were kind of like, oh, what do we think about this? And now, I mean, in the whole of this recent move in BTC. ETH has sucked. Like it's done
I
nothing.
wonder I wonder if someone was forced to sell because of some of the DAT stuff. because I think that Tom Lee was even buying more. He was, oh, what's happening? He was putting like crazy targets, like 12K, 20K. Like he was
Well,
on
we
a run.
had the
Like,
kelp DAO exploit, which we talked about on
true,
the
true,
last,
that's
so,
true.
and that was a real concern point because we had Aave at like 100% utilization, which now we're kind of got out of that. But there was this real question mark of, hey, there's I think something like 50,000 ETH that needs to be accounted for. What's going to happen? So I can kind of understand that. I also saw, I haven't dug into this too much, but I was reading a little bit the other night about some proposals gaining momentum about some changes to the issuance of ETH on the staking side, which
Interesting.
would reduce issuance quite a lot, but it would also reduce validator payouts. And a lot of I saw Lido coming out and basically saying, hey, like this change would effectively kill liquid staking tokens.
Mm,
And so my point being not anything necessarily to do with the proposal itself, but more it's one of many levels of uncertainty around ETH that previously it just didn't ever have that baggage.
yeah.
It was kind of up until
Yeah, there's too
really,
much weighing on it right
yeah, I
now.
mean,
That's what I think.
it's been one of those that actually, like, to be honest, since the ETH ETF, it's not. It's felt like it's had more burdens attached to it than positives, and we've talked a lot about its strength over this cycle so far, and how it's kind of been quite disappointing. It's certainly not behaved in the way that we've seen ETH operate before. The only thing that ETH can probably take solace in is that it's not Sol. But
Oh wait, but that
like
was actually moving, no?
I think it's been doing
Yeah,
something
yeah. Well, oh, I
at least
haven't. Yeah.
in recent times.
I mean,
It's moved with BTC at least.
ish. Yeah.
But yeah, it just
Best of the worst, I guess.
it's looked weak. I mean, both of
But
these
still,
two.
this is kind of like the thing where with a chart you never want to see at least a chart that you're longing. Obviously, if you're shorting, great. But with a chart that you're longing, you never want to see that it makes like a detour at the first resistance that it can
Yeah.
find. Like that is exactly what ETH has been doing as well. And the thing is that to me, what was so funny is that if you were shorting ETH, you had so many opportunities.
Oh my
Like at
God.
this level, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like you could short this level like 8 times.
If
Like
you
come on, you
Like
know?
it's almost been impossible to get liquidated on a short with ETH. It's like
Yeah, low key.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I will say, this is also what I meant before. It's like when EMAs are chopping, like like this, like is not really there's not really something that I want to be involved in, because we have
no,
so many of these trends that are extremely clean and clear. It's like, why would you want to trade this? Like, actually, on both sides, kind of, right? Because it's like, whether you're a bull or a bear, you preferably want a very clean trend. Like, on the bear side, like, this was a super clean trend. Like, look how
yep,
long we stayed, like, below this. So that's kind of like what's ideal. With ETH, yeah, I have nothing to say.
it's hard to have any real conviction, I think,
Because it's
in
also
ETH.
not going down because it had the opportunity to fall out of this and then that it
Yeah,
also didn't do. So it's yeah, it's really compressing, which is why I drew the triangle.
which who knows? Like maybe this will coil up and we'll see a big move either way. It's just it's hard
Yeah,
to get on board with ETH because it just hasn't had any kind of level of conviction. And when we have so many other options alongside it,
yeah,
it's like why would I take that risk really?
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
but
I
yeah.
would say like for anyone wondering about it, I think like, this is like what you need to get reclaimed
Hmm.
first and then, this and then eventually hopefully we'll trade to here. But yeah, there's so many better things to trade in my opinion. This would never have my choice unless it starts showing like some very different strength and price action from what we are seeing now. I think for now, because I know we're coming to a close, I think BTC. Oh yeah, this is a
It's
fractal
looking
I
good.
drew. Yeah, this is what I drew for the bulls, what they want to hold so far. It's playing out, but I'll quickly remove from the chart. I think we really, really want to see BTC close above the 82K level. That's what the bulls want to see. For the bears, I think they have also some work to do because they have to push it below these highs here,
Mm,
which they also haven't been able to do. So it's like for both parties, there's work to do. And in between, like 79, 78, and 82 is kind of just awkward.
yes.
But maybe today's clarity vote can give us a direction, or the market's reaction to it. You know, it's always more important than the actual news. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Hopefully next week we're streaming with just as much exciting candles, whether it's ups or
Yeah,
down.
I think this
Just
is the bit
no
I always
sideways,
like.
please.
Yeah, I like stuff like times like this because we're not just talking about just what's BTC going to do and kind of nothing else really matters. We've got a few things to keep tabs on. I do think either way, we could see some nice volatility, even if I think that things are most likely to simmer down over the summer. Like, I'm not a fortune teller here, but we've still got a good chunk of May, and so far markets overall have been very risk on, and
Yeah.
this trend that we're on with BTC through from the start of April really is a very nice looking trend.
Yeah,
So
it's been a while also, eh? We've
yeah.
kind of rode it pretty perfectly. And now still, even though we dipped, pretty deep, it's yeah, let's see. Like I said, it will be a huge if we could break above 82 on a convincing basis or above like this little oh, everything's gonna come back now that I do this. Yes. But above this
Hmm.
range as well, yeah, there is work to do, but yeah, let's see what we get. Either way, I'll be focused on strong charts. I think seeing what comes out of here and out of all of these, you know, little EMA situations will be really key. If we can build, yeah, constructive structures, I think it's can be nice to trade those. But yeah, don't forget where we are in the cycle and in the world. I think on that
100%.
note, great to chat.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was a good one. Loads to stay on top of, and I know Den, you've been sharing quite a lot out on X on some of the different charts. So, would recommend everyone watching to keep tabs on Den's X. You can follow Den at Dentoshi. Make sure you also follow at Kraken Pro at Kraken FX. We'll be sharing the full replay out very shortly. We'll have a summary up on the Kraken blog as well. And of course, we'll be back for our next trading spaces. I think I don't want to commit to this, but I'm going to publicly say it so that it happens. I think we'll have Chase on as well on
Yes,
the next
speak
one.
it
So we'll
into
bring,
existence.
yeah, we'll get the full dream team back in. We'll
Love that.
manifest some green candles all together. Um, but it's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone that's joined in. Thanks, Dan. Hope you have a great end
Awesome.
to the week. Nice weekend, and yeah, we'll pray for continued momentum.
Yes, see you soon.